Hello, Indie Warriors! Ex-Hardcore Gamer here with I Dream of Indie to talk to you about Vampire the Masquerade Swansong.
Just like New Orleans, this is definitely Dijon's place. It's from an animal, and it's still fresh.
While the game is available on PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, I am going to be talking about the PC version. The franchise started back in the early 90s as Vampire the Masquerade, a tabletop role-playing game, and has had many spin-offs and other types of media forms since then. As a teenager, I had a friend who was very into playing the game, and he tried to rope me into it, but after a game that resulted in me shooting myself in the foot, thankfully just in the game, I decided that maybe this wasn't the game for me. I did also try and collect the trading cards as I was really into Magic the Gathering at the time. Unfortunately, nobody else wanted to play and I never really took the time to learn how to play, but I did enjoy the fact that it had great artwork and it had Depeche Mode and Nine Inch Nails quotes on them. We can jump ahead now to the video games, of which there have been 3 already previously released, including the fan favorite Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. While there is a sequel to that coming soon, Vampire the Masquerade Swansong is not at all anything like that. This has more in common with the 2019 visual novel release, as this is a role-playing game that is strictly about the narrative and all about storytelling with no combat. Thankfully, Swansong is set up so that anybody who is new to the franchise will be able to jump in and know what is going on. There is quite a bit of lore to learn, but at least they will give you codex points to be able to read as you're playing. Swansong is set in Boston in this world of darkness, which is the name of the universe that they have given, where vampires exist even though humans don't know it. This practice of hiding from humans is actually what they refer to as the Masquerade, which is where the title comes from. Previously, much of the storyline in Vampire the Masquerade was about different factions of vampires that were all at war with each other. Swansong is a bit different, and now they're actually trying to band together to become stronger. There's a new Prince of Boston that's actually trying to strengthen their faction by bringing it together with Hartford. That's right, you're hearing real locations as it is set in New England, and as a gamer from New England, it was kind of cool to be able to hear about all these locations that I've spent plenty of time in. Unfortunately, in this time of trying to band together, there has been a shootout, and now there is a code red. There is an investigation going as to what has happened, and you will play as 3 different vampires, all from different clans, with varying point of views as to what has happened. Swansong is very story heavy, with most of your time spent talking to other characters. At different points in time, you will be able to make different decisions that may not have an obvious choice as to what would be the best way to go. Also, since it is an RPG, there will be times that you have different stats that can affect different choices that you can make. Some options may become available to you or may be hidden from you based on what type of stats that you have for your character, of which you have some control over where you spend your experience. You have different ability points that can be used while you play as well that can maybe give yourself a bit more of an advantage with the dice roll. These options and abilities come in the form of being able to use persuasion, intimidation, or maybe just being more clever than the person that you're talking to. Depending on the choices that you make, what abilities that you use, and whether or not you were even successful at using said abilities, will then be able to give you more traits that can be used in further conversations later on in the game. When you're not talking to other characters, that's when you're going to spend time walking around and doing some exploration to do the investigating yourself. While you do have direct control over the character, it does feel a bit like the Telltale games and other games that have you doing investigating, where you're walking around, finding clues, reading different pieces of paper, and just finding items that will help you out throughout the game. Each of the characters that you play as also have their different powers that can be used while investigating, such as being able to turn invisible or enhancing your senses to be able to see things you wouldn't normally see, or eavesdropping. Unfortunately for some, this is pretty much the meat and potatoes of Vampire the Masquerade Swansong. You're going to spend the game walking around to find somebody else to talk to so they can give you some more information to walk somewhere else and talk to another person. Or maybe find an item to walk around and go to another place to find another item, and any mixture of anything in between. I can definitely see there being fans of this style of game, but for someone like me, I was looking for a bit more action, and as I mentioned, there is no combat whatsoever. With a lot of lifeless animation, uneven acting, and even audio levels that change within the same sentence, it does make it a bit hard to get into the story even if you are somebody who is into more of a narrative-driven game. While talking to the various characters, there will be codex points that will pop up and you can press a button to read them, but unfortunately there were times that it didn't work for me, or it happened in the middle of a sentence, so by the time I finished reading the 3 pages of information that it gave me, I totally forgot what the person was saying. Another point of confusion comes in the fact that you constantly hop around playing as the different characters, sometimes within the same conversation. There would be times that you were trying to persuade somebody, and then you switch as that person that you were just trying to persuade, so you almost feel conflicted as to which way you're supposed to be playing it. Thankfully, whenever you complete a story segment, it gives you a rundown on the different decisions that you made. This shows you what were successes and what were failures, as well as just different dialogue points that you could have done differently or maybe even a little bit better. This is a great feature as it allows you to be able to play through the game again and replay a segment to make different choices and see how it'll affect the outcome of the story. For a game that's very narrative driven, it's definitely commendable to be able to make it so that there's not only one way to play through it. I did unfortunately also run into some bugs and glitches while playing that did affect the gameplay, but there have been some patches that were done throughout the review process, and hopefully they'll continue work on it so that there's a good experience for those that buy the game. I ran into things like hair flailing around and other little glitching animations, and thankfully one of the bugs that has been fixed was there was this weird haze around everything except for the character that you played as. There was another bug where I walked into a couch and I was no longer able to walk through it, and I got stuck and had to restart the game to be able to play again. On a positive note though, for those of you that like to use a controller while playing on PC, it does give you the option to be able to use Xbox or PlayStation button layouts. For those of you looking for different accessibility options while playing your games, you will be disappointed to see that the only option in Swansong is the ability to turn on subtitles. For a slower paced game, this may not be too much of a barrier for gamers out there, but it is something that I felt should be pointed out. The graphics and performance is another uneven aspect of Vampire the Masquerade Swansong. There's that previously mentioned lifeless animation, and it has that dead behind the eyes look to a lot of the character models. You have the hair flailing around and other glitches that I mentioned before, and mouths that are nowhere near in sync. But at the same time, there will also be some decent detail to the character models, and it does support DLSS. With my RTX 2060, I was able to run the game at the 2K resolution at max settings and get about 100 to 150 frames per second consistently. The uneven experience does continue into the sound department of Swansong, as you will hear some great music that really fits the theme of the game, but unfortunately the voice acting is all over the place. You're going to get some performances that are good, you're going to get some that are bad, and you're going to get everything in between. And sometimes it's going to be from the same actor and character. So while I was definitely bored while playing Vampire the Masquerade Swansong, and the bugs didn't help matters any with me having to restart and running into other issues while playing, I can still see there being an audience for this game and people that will enjoy playing it for the story. There are some unique mechanics that you can go through, and those that play on Epic Game Store will be happy to know that it does support achievements. I'm well aware that different people are looking for different things while playing games, and I wanted to keep that in mind while going through this review. If you are a gamer like me and you're looking for a bit more action in your games, then this is one that I definitely say to stay clear of. But for those of you that aren't like me, then maybe this is something to check out despite its flaws.
How are you feeling?
I feel great. Better and better since I got my little sugar fangs back.
Wonderful.
I haven't seen Richard yet. Does he know I've been released from the Institute?
No, I'm the prince. It was my decision.
Thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free independent content here at I Dream of Indie. We couldn't possibly make it without our brave indie warriors and legends. At the Indie Warriors tier, we have Bill, Christian Cruz, Adriana Amato, CJR, PSC, Julian Kolbus, Jesse, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, and Lex Noyle. And the brave indie legends include Jen Rose, Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Peach, Skepticism, C. Coyle, Nathan Moore, Chris Jackson, Mr. W, Blue Francis 14, The Beefarinis, Business Cody, Carmen Red, Jace Glover, King of the Hatch, and Ophidian Mind. Thank you so much for all that you do for independent developers, publishers, and for I Dream of Indie. Head on down to the description box below so you can learn how to become an indie warrior or legend yourself, get access to exclusive content, and help us bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming.